Hello, friends, and welcome to World Build with Us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, we finish up the second part of a two-part series brought to you by our patron Kaiser, aka Victoria. A huge thank you to them for the prompt. And as a reminder, if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow some instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be building your world. As another reminder, I always like to remind you that this is, in fact, the second part of a two-part series. So please, if this is your first time listening, go back, listen to that first part, because otherwise, when we start throwing around like Christian sex cults and like shards of hell and stuff like that, it might sound a little confusing. But last we left off of our Carnival cruise ship from hell, we actually had a twist, which was now add in some time travel. And Courtney, how did you reconcile that twist? What do you got for us?
Yeah, my thought was that the time travel isn't necessarily like a literal, traveling through time, but more so that this entity that we had created last time, the like thing lurking in the ship that's consuming people's souls, and it's from hell and so on. See, this is why you should listen to the first part when there's a second, because you're just going to be so lost.
Like I said, boneless sex monster. Like what the hell?
I forgot that it was boneless.
It's boneless. Yeah, this is like a chicken nugget, no bones.
Tasty. So my thought was basically that the people who it kind of eats, consumes over time, takes over for energy. It has them as part of itself now, as part of this amalgamation, and like they are, in a way, it's a way to like return to the time that they were from and just talking to them, if you were able to talk to them, if that makes sense. Like they're part of it and they can be accessed in a way, and they have these memories with them, but the issue is that they're obviously part of this horrible amalgamation hell beast.
I think I know what you're trying to say here, Courtney. And if you don't mind, I think it actually works really well with the way that I reconciled the twist.
Yeah, sure.
Because similarly, I wanted it to be not like a physical, like we're back in the 1950s or whatever it is, like we're not back to the futuring ourselves, but like through like a big orgy. I was thinking like the way that I squared it was literally time folds in on itself. And I think that what we can do is we can have it so the creature is able to in the last episode, we kind of talked about this idea that parts of the ship get like warped through like pheromones and like it feels like kind of like weird spatial stuff that happens. What if the way that time folds in on itself is you are reliving parts of the collective ooze monster's life? So like pheromones that they're inducing or that they're like breathing in, they walk into like, oh, this is a scene from the 1950s, and it's actually like one of the like it's a childhood scene from one of the ooze monster people.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's a cool way to have it interact. And I could even see it not necessarily being like there aren't, people there, but you just walk into a scene that was clearly like, this is not a modern ship that I'm on anymore.
Exactly. Or like you walk into like a farmhouse or something like that, or like you walk into a big field, you're like, oh, what the hell happened here? Like that, like immediate, like impossible space, but it's actually like more psychical, like a more psychic resonance type thing.
Yeah. And like, I think I talked last time about the show 1899, which has a lot of weird, surreal stuff in it. And part of it was stuff like that, where as they were exploring the ship and trying to figure out what the fuck was happening, like you can open a passageway and it's like, okay, this should not exist here. This is like a massive landscape that I'm in now. This should not be possible.
That sounds dope.
What I like about that is it leaves the possibility that these things aren't literally happening. So, for example, it could be totally psychological.
Yeah.
And so, if someone were trying to analyze this from a material world point of view, they might be able to say, well, it's really in your mind, and you're not actually in this scene, and that maybe a way of like rationalizing your way out of its power.
Yeah, I like that.
Ooh, I also love the idea that like the protagonists are eventually able to understand what's going on and then like navigate it. So it's like, I want to see how this flesh beast got made, and then they're able to like travel through like psychic planes to an origin point, and it's like, oh wow, look at that, or like the ability to traverse this with some regularity or some like deftness is fascinating and horrifying to me.
Yeah, I imagine it would take a lot of skill and knowledge to be able to do that, and something that you wouldn't want to attempt unless you knew exactly what you were doing, because I feel like it could have some really bad effects if you don't know what's gonna
Now
happen.
just barrel through every open door that you see. Just
Mhm,
run, run through every door.
We see this happening in Event Horizon too, where there's always a question as to what actually is in their minds and what's not.
Yeah.
When they're in certain scenes. I mean, obviously there's literal effects of the horror that happen, but in the beginning, it's a lot of question as like, are they seeing these things, or is it just hallucination?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that like if you're gonna do like that kind of like psychological horror, then I mean, I think that like the original prompt asked us to mix in that Event Horizon, and I feel like this is a perfect way for us to like pay homage without being like, did you get it? Did you get that? Like that kind of thing,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, eloquence aside, Daniel, how did you reconcile with the twist that now throw in some time travel?
I mean, along the same lines, I didn't want to do actual time travel, but I had thought that because the monster has been doing these voyages for a while, like it's come in and out, and they've made these sacrifices, that the protagonist would have to rely on artifacts left in the ship, or logs or records or whatever it is that comes from previous journeys to really solve their problem. So the time traveling is more of like trying to understand the past to solve their current situation. I think that works perfectly with what you guys have, because we have these psychical imprints left from the past. We have the monster itself containing the spirits of the people from the past that it's absorbed. So then the last leg of that is the physical artifacts left behind over time, whether that's like a note they find, or whether it's a stuffed animal from a particular time period. These things, they can piece together the situation and potentially save themselves if that's an option in this world.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love the idea that there are these like everyday items that are like part totem, part talisman, like equal parts anchor as well, like to these psychic planes and stuff like that. And I also love the idea like that you could just randomly, like come across something like this. Like there's a precocious child who just so happens to come across like a yo-yo, and all of a sudden they're in a malt shop in the 60s, and like there's like horrible violence happening, like something like that. But like when we see these items, like that we're talking about here, do we see them as like keys, or do we see them as like a way to protect yourself from the psychic goings on? Like, what are we thinking these objects are?
I mean, I think these are things left over from the past. So like, not that they're magical in any way. I meant to literally like that these are it's like the manifest of previous journeys. Maybe you're in a shut off portion of the lower deck that used to be old crew rooms, and they find in that room like a woman's like belongings, and that gives them some clue moving forward. And it's more like investigative artifacts that are left over that could be the key to helping them solve what's happening right now.
Yeah. I was suggesting that like when you pick those up, it like unlocks that like psychic kind of area that we're talking about. Are you suggesting that that's not what you want to do, that you like might see this scene play out, but then there's a key piece missing, and it's like, okay, I know that I need this thing from this area to come and unlock this area again?
I'm sure that's possible too. But what I was talking about is more like, as a foil to the supernatural stuff that's happening, is using reasoning, and deductive reasoning based on what's left from the past to arrive at conclusions. And so like it's a non-magical. I mean, I feel like the counter to the supernatural in the setting is the rational, especially if we're talking about this actually being having a religious source. So like these physical objects, or looking through crew logs, these are ways of investigating in a mundane fashion, right? But I'm sure there are some totems that are left behind that have absorbed some evil from this thing that maybe give them a flashback. But well, the only reason why I want to distinguish between that and the psychic stuff and this is that if there's a detective on board, or if there is a researcher, their only defense against the supernatural might be that they're holding on to their own wits and trying to rationalize their way through this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see it kind of going anywhere from like purely real investigation, reading through the logs, like you were saying, and then also kind of like Return of the Obra Dinn, which in that game you play I think it's an insurance investigator, and you're on this ship, you're trying to figure out what's happened to it, and you literally do see scenes from the past and piece things together that way. I think it could go either way depending on like how a GM would want to run this adventure, or if you want to turn this into a point and click adventure game. Yeah, I could see it working along that spectrum.
I was actually thinking about this similarly, Courtney, where if we're doing this as a role-playing game, this is the perfect kind of way to introduce like a 3-clue rule, where like the object can be used in multiple ways. One, if you're just like a bare bones mundane detective, you might get like, oh yeah, no, this is 100%, like this kind of thing. You can kind of deduce it out. And I like that Daniel's kind of anchoring this in the mundane, where you don't need the psychic stuff. You don't need the kind of like psychonaut experimental, like wild shit for you to just suss out what's going on. But simultaneously, I like the idea that you can also just be a psychonaut and be like, oh, wait, I know what this is because of this particular object and this particular clue. And I think that there's something cool about like being able to use a particular clue multiple ways in that regard.
Yeah, I think you have the options there. Like how, just like Courtney's saying, like you can lay it out either way or both, mix them together even if you wanted to.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was looking for. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like with the mixing together too, like I think last time we had talked about potentially the cultist crew members using drugs or things like that to make people have visions or just other experiences. And I could see that happening here too. Like maybe as they dose you up more, you're more likely to see into the multiple psychic planes that exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. This is all sounding really cool. I'm really interested to see how we did factions and or characters this time, because we're kind of limited. We're kind of working with a really limited space. So, Daniel, why don't you kick us off this time? Where and what kind of faction did you introduce to our particular setting this time?
I was thinking about the types of people that are in the crew. So like not the crew servicing the ship, but people that are on the ship. So we established there's a bunch of influencers, right? That's the main trap. But I could see this journey attracting other people for various reasons. So I was thinking, well, what are some other groups that could be in there? And, to make into protagonists. So if you have the influencers, I was also thinking maybe, you'd have some sports team that's piggybacked onto this journey, and maybe there's, because they pass by some part of the ocean that has interesting scientific phenomena, maybe there's a few scientists that are here who really despise the nature of this cruise, but it was the only way they could get to that area.
Yeah.
So like kind of mixing together unlikely groups, because you could then take a character from each one. So you'd have the jock, you'd have the socialite, you'd have the scientist. Those are ways to start building a party. And as everyone gets murdered, like these are the ones trying to solve the problem in different ways. And I could see them each providing usefulness. So like the jock might be the physical strength to getting through certain situations, and the influencer, might oh gosh, I don't know how they could ever be useful. I'm sure the influencer could, maybe they have, because they've been photographing everything, they have a documentation that they could use to find the way through things. And of course, the scientist is the rational one trying to make sense of it. So it's like together they might be able to solve problems.
I also like the idea that you could also just have a science influencer who's like, I need to be taken seriously. Like, I'm a scientist. Like, I've got the PhD and I'm getting more clicks for IFL science bullshit. I'm, like, there's something to that I think could like hook those two characters together in a certain way where it's like, it's justifiable that they're like, okay, the only way for me to get to this research point is via this cruise. And I guess I'll be an influencer for a little while I'm getting there or something like that. Or you could just do like a straight up curmudgeonly scientist who's like, I have no idea why I'm coming on this trip, but like, just that's what you got, Also, I don't know why my scientist was German, but that's what happened.
Oh my God, I would love the scientist to just be Werner Herzog.
I was just thinking that too. Can it just be Werner Herzog?
Perfect.
I've now come to understand that whenever you do a German accent now, you are either doing Christoph Waltz or you're doing Werner Herzog, and there's no in between anymore.
He's so much harder to do, I feel like.
Christoph Waltz?
No,
yeah, well,
no.
Oh, really? I feel like Werner Herzog is a lot easier to make caricature of because he's like, well, actually, no, I can see how it's difficult because of how well spoken he is and like how nihilistic
very subtle.
He is.
Like, well, he's really subtle. His accent's like different than a normal like weird German. Like when you go to like the standard like mad scientist German accent, I can do that easily. But then it's like Werner's a little bit different. Like he's slower and subtle, and there's certain things he says that are like characteristic of him, and it's just really hard,
Yeah, he has like a very particular way of the way that his like speech flows and his thoughts like merge into one another.
He's also very breathy as well when he speaks, like there's a lot to Werner. So also, if you haven't listened to a Werner Herzog document, if you only know him through memes, you should really go watch a Werner Herzog movie because good Lord, they will change your life. He's so good.
Oh my God, I need to make an AI clone of his voice because there's been some great AI cloning going on. They did one of what's the guy who does all the documentaries that are nature documentaries famous?
The British
David Attenborough.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
I saw a clone of his voice was just perfect. I bet you could do order. Oh my God, I would put that on everything. Like my away message on my phone, everything. Oh my God.
Daniel, actually, I'm not gonna lie, that sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. All right. Oh, we got a podcast, right?
Yes.
So factions. Daniel bringing in the scientist. Got it. Okay.
Yes, regarding the point that you had about like the science influencer potentially, like what if a prerequisite for becoming a passenger is like proof that you are some sort of somewhat famous like online persona. Like I've seen this with certain like exclusive forums and stuff where you have to prove that you've been active on social media for however many years or whatever, or like certain communities that try to limit who can sign up. So I could see this being similar.
Literal subscriber count gets you in or something like that.
Yeah.
Where this sounds like it starts as an episode of Black Mirror and then turns into like a Haunting of Hill House, basically, but on a cruise ship. But I do love the idea of like grounding a scientist and considering like what you were talking about earlier, Daniel, where like reason seems to be run counter to all the hellish landscape stuff. I feel like that's a smart way to go about it as well. Yeah. So, Courtney, what did you have for us? What kind of faction are you bringing into this particular setting?
All right. Well, I have a confession to make. I have very recently, as of last night, started to watch Daniel's favorite show ever, Vanderpump Rules.
Yes.
Oh, no.
That's a yes, no. And an S at the end.
And inspired by this terrible reality show, I am thinking that at least some of like the service workers on the ship, like they're crew members, but like they're the bartenders, they're the wait staff and so on, that they are also influencers who want to become famous, and they are just as terrible and awful and disgusting as the people on that show. They're just completely full of drama, and they all want to be like models / pop stars / actors, everything.
So messy bitches who are also hangers on and like clout chasers, basically.
It's like just everything like that crammed into one group of wait
Perfect.
staff.
Perfect.
Oh man, why do I feel like they're the first ones who are going to get amalgamated into the blob monster? They're the first ones who are going to go boneless. I think. I don't know why, but yeah.
I hope at least one of them survives to be part of the party. But yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's probably fair. Oh, Courtney, I love it when you bring terrible people to a faction. That's so great.
I try.
Daniel, as the resident expert here, are there any particular characters or traits that we want to keep focus on here?
Of her crew? Well, I mean, there's so many. So obviously you have like the mean girl boss, right? Who's blonde and super hot, but she's just super mean. That's Stassi, my daughter. You have the disgusting like broy dude who's like dumb as bricks, but he's also sleazy and wants to sleep with everyone. That's Jax.
And he does like mountains of cocaine, just like swimming
all
in
the
it.
time,
all
constant
the time.
cocaine. You've got like the
Wait,
twinkish.
that's Daniel. Got it.
You've got the twinkish looking guy who's like trying to bring back like metrosexual stuff, but he's too dumb for it to work, and so he kind of like looks like a low rent Harry Styles, right? But he's just as sleazy, so that's one. You definitely have the girl who wants to be friends with the mean girl and in the in crowd, but she's like too about herself for it to work. So she's just really annoying and everybody hates her. That's Sheena. Just let me know when you want to stop because I can go. So
I'm here for this because normally I rant this long about Columbo, but I get to hear this from you. This is amazing.
There's Kristen, so that's your crazy girl. Like you don't know what Kristen's gonna do. She's unhinged. There's something deeply wrong with her. Probably when she was a child, she was abandoned by someone or abused in some way, and now she acts out through all of her interactions with men. Deep down inside, though, she's a good person. She just doesn't know how to control herself. So she's constantly drunk and she's constantly fucking up her interpersonal relationships. That's your Kristen. Who else do we got here? Oh, we've got the plucky. So like the bar manager guy. He's like he looks like this hot dude. He's got long Fabio hair and such, but really he's a huge nerd, so he does not do well with women at all.
Wait, really?
Yeah, right. So
I haven't gotten to that point yet to find more about him.
He's there, but it's like it's Peter, and you'll be like, oh, if only Peter wasn't such a it wasn't so lame, he would really clean up, right? Then you have the girl. So you have the girl from Utah that shows up, but she wants to hide the fact that she's from Utah. So instead of going by Lauren from Utah, she goes as Lala. And she has big dreams of becoming a movie star. But her plans and how to do that, because she's never worked a day in her life, is to literally sleep with everyone who has power and to act like she's some gangster from like New Jersey or something. But really, she's just this blonde girl from Utah. So she'll scheme and plot her whole way through the series. You'll find her endearing because she's so ridiculous. But by the end of it, you'll be like, really, Lala, you're terrible. And shut up already. And so you have a back and forth as she starts to evolve. Then you have the DJ, right? So the DJ, he starts off as a mega douche. He's like, I don't know, he probably weighs 130 pounds. He's kind of like a chihuahua. So he's all bark, but no real bite. But he knows, because he's British too, he knows exactly what to say to really cut down to the one thing that you're self-conscious about. And he'll say the most vicious things you can think of. And while everyone, outside of the show will be laughing, you're damaged by what he just said. And you just want to punch him in the face, but the production studio won't let you do that. So he's a huge dick. Him and Lala get along great because they're just dicks, both of them.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, you find that he has a heart of gold and the capacity to change. And in fact, the person to whom he was most vicious to, Katie, the most reasonable character of most of all of them. She's kind of, post-goth, a little bit. She's a little moody, but she's always had a good head on her shoulders. She's just easily manipulated by the mean girl. But anyway, so like he's mean to Katie, right? But at the end of the day, the DJ, you find out that he really wants to make amends, and his drinking's out of control. And once he gets it under control, he has this huge DJ career. He's able to laugh at the Twinkie guy who wants to be metrosexual, the low-red Harry Styles guy, and he has a trajectory that you just wouldn't have expected, So that's James Kennedy. Yeah,
that's amazing. And also, I feel like your mention of the of James's viciousness
Yeah.
brings in the idea of like emotional psychic damage that I think we have to
Yes.
have as part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you bring this back to the setting, Courtney?
I'm sorry. I'm
Don't you
sorry.
dare!
I apologize.
It's true because his damage will be even more vicious if enhanced by the monster, and perhaps
Oh my
he's being
God.
manipulated by it, right? And that's, I mean, I haven't even talked about Lisa. There's so many other characters, but those are
Yeah.
some key ones, you know.
Yeah. Actually, this now makes me think of the Arkham Horror collectible card game, which the characters have like kind of a physical strength stat and then like the mental strength stat. And
Mhm.
if any of those get brought down to 0, you're kind of fucked. So I
Oh,
could see that
I like
working in this way too, like stat them out based on what they're good at. And you have to kind of make a party that can somewhat work together, kind of.
Yeah, it's true.
I really wish that this was a video podcast sometimes, because Daniel, I wish you could have seen me mouth agape the entire time you were explaining Vanderpump Rules to me, because I was like, dear God, the depth of knowledge and
It's so great.
blood.
Show, I'm telling you.
Also, hi editing Rob. Just so you know, that whole thing, cut that out on its own and make that a YouTube preview, because I just want to leave that like on its own, like completely isolated on its own, and just like, bam, that's it. This is this week's preview of this episode, and it's just Daniel explaining all the characters in Vanderpump Rules in its entirety. That's what I
didn't even
want
talk about the other Tom, because the other Tom's even worse. But I'll save that for a different day.
Yeah, I haven't really seen much of the other Tom yet.
He's a
I'm only on episode 3,
He's a
so
fucking
I'm
sociopath.
still.
He's
Yeah,
the
I mean,
Oshucks guy who probably would eat your brains if he had to while you're alive.
Yeah.
And it's like like the emergency hasn't even happened yet. It's just
Yes.
like,
He's just hungry. He's such a piece of shit. You have wait till you get to the part where they're all going out for. Did you get the part with Stassi's birthday and he throws?
I think that's next episode.
Oh, all right,
Yeah.
all right. You'll
Yeah.
see how that's the very beginning of how terrible the other Tom is. I hate that
Oh,
Tom
God.
more than Sandoval.
Wow.
I love this so much, but we have to move on for the sake of my sanity. We have to move on. Okay. Speaking of, actually, I don't know how I want to integrate this now, but like I kind of want to make it a Vanderpump character. Anyway, okay. Here's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, do I want to do part of a cultist? No, not really. Okay, do I want to do like some like Old Testament, New Testament split within the cult? Kind of. That's interesting. Oh, you know what is interesting? A revolt within the cult itself is pretty cool, I think. But then I got to thinking, and I'm like, okay, what happens if some of the boneless people break away from the giant blob of ooze and start to develop their own identity and forget that they were part of a giant boneless ooze, and they're like, they don't remember how they got on the ship? There's 2 of them, because what I want to happen, right, if we're doing this prestige TV style, right, these are the characters that you like. These are the characters that you're like, oh, they're pretty dope. They're actually likable compared to everyone else. And then like partway through the series, you just see one of them get completely absorbed by the blob monster. And you're like, what the fuck? Holy shit. And what actually happened is that they just went home. And that's what happened. So for now, there are 2 independent identities of blob monster, of flesh monster, who I don't know what their bone status is, but they're able to stay upright and they're able to mimic human like personalities. And they're currently on the ship as their own separate identities. That's what I got for you right now.
I think that's pretty cool. And I can even see like, other people who may have followed that like offshoot, perhaps even not even liking what they're doing and then becoming part of the group, like the party, like regular human. Because then you'd have someone who understands the cult to some degree, right? Who has to ultimately reveal themselves if they're going to survive.
Ooh, yeah. Actually, the idea that these characters are like, oh, their secret is they're actually part of the cult.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the red herring. Like they do have knowledge of the cult,
right?
But in actuality, Yeah. But in actuality, the secret below that secret is they're also a giant blob monster. You know,
or maybe they don't control it. Maybe like they were subjected to it and managed to escape, but it's still a part of them. And so, in order to get rid of it, they have to return to the Hell Shard and remove it from themselves. But being on the ship draws it out of them at certain points. So like they're trying to hold it in, and they're among this party who they know can help them get there, and they're using this party to do that. But every now and then it comes out, and there's all kinds of bad things that happen.
Yeah, like thinking to like Alien, obviously, since we watched that recently, and the idea of like something being a parasite within you, maybe this blob monster like puts part itself into you, and like I guess this is also a sex cult, so we could get pretty literal with the putting part of itself within members of the cult.
God, I hate that. I hate it so much.
So I could definitely see like this person has gone through that step and is like, okay, wow, I did not want I don't want this at all anymore, actually. That was horrifying. Please get this thing out of me. But obviously they can't just like go out and say it.
And it's like liquefying you from the inside. Oh my God, that's horrible. Oh my God, wait. The idea that you just wake up and your pelvis has been liquefied and you like look down and you're like, oh God, that's horrifying. Oh my God, that's awful. You're just like melting and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, or like maybe it kind of incubates inside of you for a while before the melting process starts.
Yeah, no, like that's what I mean is like,
yeah,
you like maybe you like start by feeling weaker and weaker, like, oh, I'm not feeling good. And then you like go to bed and then you wake up and like you're partially liquefied, like not liquefied as in like your skin, but like the bones inside you have liquefied to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, horrifying. Holy fuck.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good though. That's really good, Courtney. Oh my God. Also, yeah, tie it into the sex cult for sure. Fuck me, that's awful. Oh, I hate it and I love it at the same time. God damn.
And then that's also literally how the cult spreads. It's like it's basically like an STD in a way.
Are we making a pro-Christian anti-STD like purity movie? What are we doing here? Just for the record, Worldbuild with us is very pro-sex. Just for the record. Maybe not Daniel, but us for sure. No, I'm kidding. No, but we are very pro-sex here. That's crazy. Oh God. Okay, we got to move on. Again, we got to move on. That's just like, you're going to haunt my dreams if I let you, Courtney. So like, let's move on, shall we?
Okay. Well, I mean, you could also make it like a pro-abortion thing if you need to get rid of this parasite that's growing inside of you before it liquefies you and steals your soul.
Daniel, please save us. Please. Just give us the main storyline quest here, Daniel.
I like the pro-abortion concept. Maybe is it because she's carrying the cult mentor is carrying this parasite in them that is the evil, and they want to get it out of themselves.
Exactly.
So we can have like grotesque, we got to make the abortion positive though, because I'm all for not there being fewer children in the world. So I'm all for spinning this such that it's pro-abortion in a fun way.
Well, spoilers for the movie Immaculate, but there is a movie recently where it's like, what if Rosemary's Baby, but she's like, nah, abort that thing out of me and kill it. Like that's pretty much so like that is an interesting way, but I don't want to bring literal Satan in here. Like maybe we can just have it, it's kind of like just slightly adjacent, maybe. I don't know. I think that you're right. I think that message has some potential to it, or at least like have that be part of the kind of like theming that we're looking for here, where it's like we're exploring themes around consent and like positive sexuality and stuff like that. I think that there's some bones to that. No pun intended, considering the monster.
Nice.
All right, so what's the storyline that we're going for here? I mean, like, have we basically created like the dome of the story already, where it's like, yeah, this is like the last cruise. This is like the final like hell cruise that's going to happen, and at the very end of it, this is like the portal sunders open, and like out walks this kind of heaving abomination.
I like that for a title, by the way, The Last Hell Cruise.
Yeah.
That's great.
I thought you were going to say heaving abomination, but no, that works
Yeah.
too.
Oh, Hell Cruise 4 Heaving Abomination. And then the cover has like breasts, you know, on it.
Yeah.
Just like a pile of breasts.
Yeah, exactly. A little pile. Yes. No faces. Just a pile.
Yeah.
Fucked up.
Hot heaving abominations in your area.
I think if we zero into characters, it always helps. So if you had something like the character who is carrying this thing, who is like off from the Splinter cult, right? And then you have all of these unwitting NPCs surrounding them. It becomes a kind of a question, like in most slasher horror films, of like who makes it to the end, you know, and maybe they're trying to make their way to the end room where we establish there's like it's where it originates, or it's like housed sort of. And then you know when you get to the hell shard in the ocean, that's when you have a portal situation. But whatever the plot is irrelevant, because it's a slasher horror film. Nobody cares. But what matters is the personalities you introduce and how you murder them. And then the finale of the big horror reveal. If you were doing that kind of movie, I could see this being a movie, or I could see this being a PC grinder if it was an RPG. You know, what's the movie? There's a recent movie that had a girl who was being married into this family, and it was a big mansion.
Ready or Not?
Yes, I thought that was a fantastic movie, and I could see this being similar, you know, in structure.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. I wanted to.
It's pretty good. It's a fun one. It's got like that fun little twist in the middle, and it's like, yeah, it's good. It's good. But oh yeah, fuck it. Let's do that actually. Let's do like a fun little twisty twist in the middle where something happens, and it's like, again, can we do like cult revolution? You know, like where there's like a splinter cult that like now is their time to take action.
I was gonna say, yeah, I could see this person. I mean, maybe the Splinter cult is like looking for this person. Maybe they're the one that has the thing in them. Like maybe they're like essential to their plot in dealing with the main cult.
See, I was just thinking that they were just another cult from. We actually are just a slightly different demon that we're hoping to sacrifice you to.
And you can, I mean, that'd be funny, but yeah, I'd like to do humor.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, my inclination is to go humorous, but not here. Actually, I think it does make more sense that we do something different here, and perhaps what's the tone and the theme that we're looking at here? Because again, we're looking at like we're dealing with some very potentially very heavy topics, and how irreverent and like what kind of tone? What are we looking for here?
I mean, the prompt talks about wanting cosmic horror and the standard stuff you'd see in you know, Event Horizon and all that. But one of my positions when it comes to these prompts is if you dictate the theme that I'm going to use, then I'm going to ignore that. Or if you dictate the outcome, right? So it's a form of dictation of the outcome. I feel like what we have arrived at so far is something that has some levity to it, just because of the way we're talking about it. It seems to be a little bit more levity than, or a little bit, I would say more levity than the Event Horizon, which doesn't really have much humor in it. You know, and it's not quite as wacky as perhaps Ready or Not, right? Because we do have, like you said, there's some deeper themes that could be paralleled with like childbirth or you know, stuff like that. But again, we have a ship full of influencers, so it has to be to some degree humorous, right?
Yeah, I think that we can pivot though. Like we can do horror comedy where it's like, oh wow, you know, like we get like all the influencers and there's goofiness, and then you know, like oh, the people who die, who we want to see die in horrific, spectacular ways. Exactly. And then like at the core of it, there is this emotional core where it's like actually, you know, they're an influencer because we like them and we find them likable. And I actually do like these characters. You know, like there's something to that. You know.
Yeah, I think like focusing on seeing how these people change because of what they're going through could be a good focus for it. Thinking, Daniel, how you brought up this could be like a PC grinder type RPG where you just make up a bunch of characters and have at least one die every session or something, and you take over another one. Like, you could even pick one of the factions to be your faction. Like, maybe my faction is the shitty Vanderpump model, singer, actor, waitstaff or something. So like every time one of them dies, I have to like start playing another one from that group. But I could see that being interesting, of like, you start off hating this person, they're obnoxious, they're terrible, but they end up doing these kind of like semi-heroic acts, or they actually have occasionally intelligent ways of dealing with problems and so on.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. That, to me, I'm going to pivot entirely here just briefly to talk about this, because that's an inspired way to run like a slasher game, where it's like you're not picking individual characters, you're picking like, this is my friend group here, and holy shit, like the goal is not to survive, it's to like run through your characters last or something like that, or maybe the opposite, maybe it's to get there, like whoever kills all four of the fastest wins. Oh, it's Cabin in the Woods. I just did Cabin in the Woods again. Never mind. We can stop now. I'm I'm good. Oh man. Okay. All right. I feel like, given what we've got going on here, we've got a strong enough main storyline quest. Again, I feel like the entire like two-parter has basically been sussing out the main storyline here. So I'm happy with it, and I feel like giving the listeners here, like, hey, this is the blueprint, take it in whatever serious or non-serious, like tone or theme you want to go with the best, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, like you could even pick, your own desired Christian demon or what have you to make into this entity.
Ooh, yeah.
Like, theme everything around that. You can kind of build it in a lot of different ways.
That's actually a really fun way to consider it as well, where, like you could probably turn this into a random table and be like, hey, what's the sin this time that we're focusing on, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's where we involve Christian sex cults. It's perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And then, like, what horrific theme are we focusing on? And Courtney just so happened to roll abortion 17 times in a row. But yeah, that works too.
It's not rigged at all. Don't worry.
Yeah, no. Well, it's not rigged because all of them just say abortion, Courtney. That's the thing. Man. Okay, no, this is great. I'm feeling very happy. Do we have any other questions? Do we need to work through anything else before we sign off? Or are we done and dusted here?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. I like how this wound up.
I'm with you 100%. I'm with you. So again, a major thank you to one Victoria, aka Kaiser, for their particular prompt. And as always, a reminder that if you want us to build your world, you can go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow the instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we can be building your world. If you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter and YouTube. So go ahead, follow us, subscribe, bell, etc., wherever, whenever, however long you want, all that good stuff. Let's see what else we got. All right. And if you want to talk to us more directly, we've also got a Discord with the link for that in the description of the episode. And if you're feeling particularly generous or just want access to sweet, sweet patron-only goodies, you can go ahead and give us money over on our Patreon. So that's going to do it for this episode of World Build with Us. Remember that we love you very much, and we're going to get through this together. Until next week.